Abba-dee, abba-die, abba-dee, abba-die, abba-dee, abba-die. Welcome to Daily Metal, where every day a different metal album gets dissected for your sadistic listening pleasure. I'm the heavy metal lawyer, Emma, and in this show, I'll talk about why the music in these albums is so good and where they fall in the history of music's most wretched genre. On August 23rd, 2019, metal-loving hardcore kids Knocked Loose rewrote the rules with their second full-length album, A Different Shade of Blue. I remember hearing about Knocked Loose back when they played some shows with one of my favorite deathcore bands, Oceano, back in, I think it was 2016. The prominence of deathcore, slam death metal, and beatdown hardcore in the 2000s and 10s created a scene with a lot of sonic diversity. As long as there were brutal breakdowns that the fans could go crazy in the pit to, anything could really fit in, from the screamo of "See You Space Cowboy" to the corn-fried riff jockeying of "Every Time I Die." Knocked Loose quickly earned a reputation on this scene, pretty much from the moment they signed to Pure Noise Records in 2013. While they were decidedly a hardcore band, with vocalist Brian Garris seeming like a modern version of legendary SSD Control vocalist Springa, and drummer Kevin Kane using skate punk type drumming in a lot of the songs, they sounded a lot heavier than even a lot of the beat-down hardcore bands in the 2000s. The band's first album, Laugh Tracks, debuting in 2016, showed a knack for knowing how to ratchet up tension throughout a song to finally get to that sweet release of the breakdown. The track Billy No Mates drops the vocals and guitars only about 30 seconds into the song. The guitar returns as pure feedback, and then Brian just emits this wordless scream as the guitars pummel the listener with palm-muted chords. And this isn't even the heaviest part of the song. Not even close. That comes in the last 20 seconds of the song with the actual breakdown. This is a really risky songwriting strategy for any kind of extreme music band. If the heaviest part of the song isn't sufficiently heavier than the other heavy sections of the song, it can make it sound repetitive rather than climactic. You hear that a lot, particularly in the less talented deathcore bands. But Knocked Loose have some kind of magical ability to always pull it off, and the band does it in such a seemingly effortless way, as if the music was possessing them rather than them making the music. While Laugh Tracks had a lot of good songs, particularly fan favorites like Dead Ringer and Counting Worms, it was not a very well structured album. Even the band or labels seemed to realize this to some extent by switching up the order of the tracks in the combo music video for Billy No Mates and Counting Worms, perhaps reflecting that Counting Worms would have been better served as one of the last tracks on the album rather than in the middle, making the album peak a little too early and having it suffer from the most common problem in hardcore albums, losing steam on the second half of the album. But the genius was definitely there, and the band became part of this new wave of extremely heavy hardcore music, coalescing around festivals like This Is Hardcore Fest in Philly, with bands like Nails, Code Orange, Incendiary, and Jesus Piece starting to make names for themselves. And it was at the 2018 This Is Hardcore Fest in Philly that Knocked Loose started to show that they were more than just exceptionally heavy. The band's set incorporated breakdowns both in the middle and at the end of the set that were not actually from the songs in Laugh Tracks, and particularly with the outro, you start to hear these despairing guitar tones that return in force on A Different Shade of Blue, which makes me think the aforementioned Knocked Loose magic is actually a process of experimentation at their live shows. It might be why the band takes its time on making new albums and focuses a lot on touring. That Knocked Loose magic gets taken to the next level with A Different Shade of Blue. The album has much more thematic cohesion, sounding like an album rather than just a collection of songs, by making lyrical callbacks and having songs smoothly transition into one another. The transition between Guided by the Moon and Mistakes Like Fractures is so good that I pretty much always listen to both of the songs rather than just listening to one or the other. The songs just pair really well, too, with Guided by the Moon being one of the tracks most outside the Knocked Loose standard model, while Mistakes Like Fractures is the perfection of that standard model. Almost like the whole purpose of the slow, sludgy Guided by the Moon is just almost 4 minutes of ratcheting up tension for the hardcore hurricane of Mistakes Like Fractures. The album's second peak is the track And Still I Wander South, which has like 100 parts crammed into its 3 minutes and 42 seconds, but they all manage to work together, from the reverberating clean guitar to the weird effects throughout the song to the hardcore breakdowns. So many breakdowns. Breakdowns on breakdowns on breakdowns. The short passages of silence or relative quiet in the song are as discomforting or disorienting as the most ferocious sections, because you're always waiting for that ferocity that you know is going to roar back in. The mood of the album is epitomized from the fictional news broadcast sample at the end of the track In the Walls, describing a man who murdered his family and then got into his car to listen to the radio. The album's title comes from the lyrics in the track Guided by the Moon, which are Guided by the moon, I hope you find your way, led by the hand with fingers coiled, no evil left to fray. I watch you cling to life, a strength I never knew. I don't know how to feel. This is a different shade of blue. Blue has double meaning, both relating to despair. Blue as the feeling, the emotion of depression, but also blue as the color of fingers clinging to life in the moonlight. The band made that theme even more transparent in the music video for Mistakes Like Fractures, which, if you haven't seen, go ahead and watch it right now. It might be my favorite music video of all time. Pulling all these threads back together, a different shade of blue showed that you can have uncompromisingly heavy breakdowns without sacrificing album craft, thematic cohesion, and creative borrowings from across the spectrum of metal music. So what band do you think has mastered building up tension and releasing it with breakdowns? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, please subscribe so you can find out what the metal album of the day is, why it is so brutal, and where it fits in the history of the genre.